Hi guys, and welcome back to the Crawl Room. Here we go again. It's that wonderful time once again to rant about Formula E. And Berlin has really delivered this weekend, hasn't it? I mean, race one was fucking chaos. It was frantic, there was questionable overtakes, manoeuvres, crashes, collisions. And then in this race it seemed to calm down a little bit as the drivers and teams had learnt a little bit more about how to set the car up for the circuit and how best to not be in the lead and things like that, you know. But it was still a fantastic race, but the qualifying tipped everything on its head, didn't it, for this round? Unbelievable stuff. So if you've never seen this series before, I award the drivers out a maximum of 10 points based on their race weekend's performance, and I go all the way down to 0 if they have a particularly bad one. Look out for bonus points though. They're sometimes on offer for some drivers that do something extra special during a race, and on the very rare occasion, although it's becoming more common on this series, I do award minus points to those drivers that do something extra special but for all the wrong reasons. So before we kick things off with the race winner, take a look at the current Crawl Room standings. It's on the screen now for you to take a look at. Have a look and see where your favourite driver is up and down this field. Where do you think they deserve to be? Do you think I've been harsh on them? Do you think not? Well, let me know after this race, because of course it's time for me to award the points of the Berlin E-Prix. So let's kick things off with the race winner then, Nick Cassidy. I said yesterday, didn't I? I said in yesterday's episode he is Mr. Consistency this season. He's really delivering well in this Gen 3 era of car. He's putting in some solid performances, and when he's not got the pace, he's still picking up the points. And here he is this weekend with the points, with the pace, and with the victory. Fantastic stuff. He's driving so well, and what was more commendable for this race overall is that he had the race lead for quite a long time of that race. I mean, normally that's the whole point, isn't it? That's the whole point of a race weekend. You get in front and you go win the bloody thing. But here at Berlin it was still very much the same. It was a repeat of race one. No one wanted the lead of the race. Nick Cassidy didn't want the lead of the race despite him being in it from around, what were we on, about lap 30 he took the lead, and he had 10 more laps to go. Might have been a little bit sooner than that, but nonetheless, he just maintained his pace enough to the point where he still had roughly the same energy as the cars around him, and then was able just to push at the end and deliver a fantastic victory. You know, he drove so well there, didn't he? He drove fantastically well, and what made it even better was he had a difficult qualifying as well. A lot of cars out of position as mentioned, and he came through the field. It was just incredible once again to see the chaotic nature of Formula E, where you're like, hang on a minute, how did he get there? How did he get there? How did he get there? How did that happen? What happened there? Why is that down there? It was just chaos, and here he is, Nick Cassidy, carving his way through to the front of the field, doing a solid job, and really putting a stamp on this championship charge now, because he's only 4 points behind now Pascal Wehrlein. You know, the Pascal Wehrlein that had an unassailable lead at the start of the season. He won 2 out of the first 3 races, and then he kept winning races as Jake Dennis fell over, you know, and kept tripping up over himself constantly for 4 rounds. And he had like a crazy 30-odd point buffer at one point, and now Nick Cassidy, Mr. Consistency, is just a few points behind Pascal Wehrlein. And no one would have predicted that. No one. Not this soon as well. You know, it was only literally 4 races ago that Wehrlein had such a commanding lead, and now 4 races later, Nick Cassidy's going, hello mate, I'm here now. I want to play with the big boys. And here he is doing a fantastic job. So he did what Buemi couldn't quite manage yesterday, of course, in the last race, where it was all about the management of the percentage, and he just fell a little bit short, did Buemi, but Cassidy got into the lead and delivered the goods and stayed there. Incredible stuff. So for Nick Cassidy, it's going to be 12 points on the cruel corner to him. It has to be, doesn't it? He's got himself within touching distance of the championship now. You know, he's really put his stamp on this series in this Gen 3 car and delivers another incredible result. His second ever win in Formula E as well. So that's how consistent he's been. He's been there picking up the points, he's been getting the seconds and thirds, but he's not been there getting the victories, and now he has. Oh, there he is. He's into the championship hunt, and it's great to see, and I hope he keeps delivering, because I really like Envision, and I really like Nick, and I'd like to see him do well. And yeah, I hope he can continue this form that he's in now, because at the minute he's in his prime. We're halfway through the season. I hope the second half's just as strong as the first half for him, because he's doing well. So yeah, Nick Cassidy, 12 points on the cruel corner. Then we come to Jake Dennis. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. After 4 races of no points, 4 consecutive races of no points, here he is, finally back where he belongs, in a podium position, 2nd place. Fantastic stuff. A long time coming, long overdue. From the first 3 races of this season, we were like, yeah, it's going to be between Verline and Jake Dennis, and maybe a bit of bad luck. Da Costa can come in and have a go at it. But oh no, Jake Dennis just threw it all away. He's had some bad luck as well, where he's been taken out of races, but he self-destructed last race at Berlin, and now this race he's finally delivered the goods and got a solid position. He came over the radio at one stage, wasn't he? Like, yeah, I know, but no risks. And he knew eventually, like, oh yeah, I did score points. You know, and here he is finishing in 2nd place. Fantastic stuff. I'm pleased for Jake, I really am. I'm glad that he's finally scored some points again and got that, that camel off his back, whatever the saying is. Devil on your back, maybe not camel. What am I talking about? But nonetheless, you know, Jake Dennis, fantastic guy, fantastic driver. Finally delivered the goods once again, and it's 9 points on the cruel corner to him. Yeah, he deserved that result. I hope that gives him a boost into the second half of the season. He's still not all over for the championship by any stretch of the imagination, but there's been a lot of drivers putting in some good performances while he's been not scoring points, and he's got a lot of catching up to do. But if he proves to be as dominant as he was in the first 3 races as he's in the last 8, there's a chance he can do it still. But for now, 9 points on the cruel corner. Next up we come to Jean-Eric Vergne. The position he probably felt he deserved in the first race finally comes in the second, securing a podium position with 3rd place. Again, a great drive by Jev. It's difficult to say how on earth these drivers came through the field where they started from, because 1, I didn't watch qualifying, 2, I knew it were chaotic and wet, and in 3, it was dry up, it was drying, it was a drier race, and the teams had got more experience on what to do based on yesterday's race as well. So yeah, forgive me if I'm rushing through these a little bit, but yeah, it's all much of a muchness. It's chaos. I'm sure you can't really remember how drivers got through either. And I have watched this race twice, and I'm still struggling to find out. But nonetheless, Jean-Eric Vergne overall, I think it was a solid weekend, wasn't it? You know, he wasn't massively down there outside the points, but he'd come good. Here he is finishing in the podium places. It's got to be the same score as Jake Dennis, hasn't it? It's got to be 9 points. He's a bit like a Cassidy, but a bit more unlucky, isn't he? He had a couple of tough rounds at the start of the season where the DS Penske just wasn't doing what they wanted it to do for him and Van Dorn. But then once he's got to grips with the car, he's been the better performer overall and been more solidly in the points. Not enough for a title hunt, but at least he's there picking up the points regularly now and picking up podiums as well. So yeah, congratulations Jean-Eric Vergne for that. Nice to see him on the podium. And yeah, like I say, I think this was the position he felt he deserved in race 1, but he tumbled away a little bit. But nonetheless, 9 points on the Cruel Room team this time around, and another podium to add to his collection of many. Then we come to Mitch Evans finishing in at 4th place, just outside the podium places. It's a shame for Mitch, because I think there could have been another podium on the cards there. He was chomping at the bit of Jean-Eric Vergne at the end there, but just couldn't find a way through and was being a little bit cautious as well. He took the glory in race 1, but there was opportunities at times there where you think Mitch could win this. Mitch could win this. He had a lot of energy, you know. He was doing really, really well, but unfortunately couldn't find his way around Jev, and that was like the cork in the bottle for him, really. It meant that he couldn't obviously progress then further up the field. So 4th is where he stayed despite the best efforts of trying to get round him. Mitch had a difficult qualifying, if I remember rightly, with this one, or did I get that confused with yesterday's race? But nonetheless, it was all the wet conditions. Teams never race in the Gen 3 era in the wet before, and some teams getting it right, some teams getting it wrong. But the main thing is, he came through the field, he scored some solid points once again, and got his championship campaign going once again after a couple of tough rounds at the start of the season for the Jaguar squad. So yeah, Mitch Evans, it's going to be 8.5 on the Cruel Corner team. I don't feel he deserves 9 of like Dennis and Vergne for finishing on the podium, but at the same time it was still a solid result. He drove smartly, he drove carefully, and drove really well, and compounded the fact that yeah, I'm here, I'm here for a title campaign now. After a win in the first race, a 4th in this, a big haul of points from Berlin, and I think he'll be leaving relatively happy. So yeah, 8.5 to Mitch Evans. Next up, it is of course Antonio Felix da Costa. The position he deserved in yesterday's race finally come good in this as well. After getting taken out by Jake Dennis last race, here he is scoring some solid points and finishing ahead of his teammate as well, which is always a nice little tick in the box there. Yeah, he was distraught. He was gutted, wasn't he, after that first race in Berlin? Not his fault at all. Getting taken out by Jake Dennis. It's just such a shame, but here he is delivering the fact that, yeah, I could have done this yesterday as well. So, yeah, big points for him. 10 points really is good for the Porsche at this moment in time. As I mentioned, I think in the first race, yesterday's video, it seems like the momentum has really swung Envision's way and Jaguar's way now, and the Porsche like the third, fourth best team at times as well, it looks like, especially when like the Van Dorn and Verne get together with the DS Penske when they're on it. So yeah, the momentum of the early season has swung into the other teams' favour, and Porsche look to be struggling now, so we're saying fifth's a good result at this moment in time. And for da Costa it is. He deserved that. He deserved those points. He could have had 10, 12 points maybe even on the podium like yesterday's race, but taken out by Jake Dennis. But here overall, finally got out of trouble, stayed out of trouble. No one tried to attempt to murder him, and yeah, finishing in 5th place. So for me, for Antonio Felix da Costa, is solid 8 points on the cruel corner to him. Deserved result at last. At least he had another stab at the cherry, another bite at the cherry, with there being 2 rounds in Berlin. So yeah, delivered what he couldn't in race 1. 8 points to da Costa. Next up, in 6th place, it's Max Gunter. Bloody hell. Bloody hell. And you might be thinking to yourself, yeah, George, but that's not quite as impressive as yesterday's race. Oh, it is. Oh, it is quite as impressive. It's just as impressive, if not more so. Because where did he start this race? Dead last. He was on the back row of the grid, was Max Gunter, to start this race. And we thought, well, business as usual for Max Gunter. He's had one good result. That's him done for the season. But oh no. He carved his way through the field. I've got no idea how, when or why. But here he is finishing in 6th place nonetheless, and he didn't kill anyone this time. Didn't even try to attempt a murder for his teammate. He just kept out of trouble, kept picking cars off one by one, kept finding his way through, made some fantastic manoeuvres, and he's finishing in 6th. What a top job. What a top job, Max Gunter. Eat your heart out. What a fantastic weekend overall, and he needed that, because had he done shit this weekend, there was no way he was staying in that car. I think he's been given an ultimatum by James Rossiter and said, look lad, you don't deliver, don't bother, don't bother leaving Germany, it's where you live anyway, stay here pal, I think he was given an ultimatum, and he either sank or he swam, and thankfully for him, and nice to see on my behalf as well, he swam, and he's done a great job, hasn't he? So Maxi Gunter this weekend for his 6th place finish after starting on the back row of the grid. It's 9 points. It has to be 9 points. What a cracking drive this weekend overall, and yeah, deserving of a good result. And he's got another one. He's got 2. It's like waiting for a bus, isn't it? You wait for points all season long, and then you score a big haul in a race, and then another big haul in the next one. Fantastic stuff. 9 points to Maxi Gunter. Then, in 7th place, it is Pascal Wehrlein. He will be left this weekend with his scratching his head, I can imagine. He's going to be a bit like, what's happening here? Who's this Nick Cassidy bloke? Only a few points being with the championship. Can you remember that bit where I was 30 points ahead? Yeah, what happened? Well, what happened is you made a huge mistake at Cape Town, and you've never really recovered from that, and only done average since, Pascal. And here he is finishing in 7th place, and overall it's not bad. He had a really difficult qualifying once again. 15th was it, somewhere like that, so it wasn't brilliant, but normally he's been able to carve through the field and get on the podium at least. Here though, he got stuck in 7th, and 7th is where he stayed. So yeah, for Pascal Wehrlein, I'm going to award him the result he finished, really, which is a solid 7. He's getting a solid 7, and that's probably generous by a point, really, because he finished ahead behind da Costa, he's finished behind Max Gunter, so maybe generous by a point there, but I'm just relieved he's picked up a few points, and, he's going to look at that checkbook, he's going to look back at the standings there and go, right, okay, Berlin should have done more, and he really should have done, so yes. Pascal Wehrlein, probably generous by a point, but it's a solid 7 to him, because, yeah, the Porsche doesn't look like it's quite got the pace, but should have been a match for his teammate at the very least. 7 to Wehrlein. Then we come to Stoffel van Dorn in the DS Penske, and yes, he was the unlucky victim in an accident in the first race. Here he is picking up a couple of points in the second race. Vern gets on the podium. Van Dorn just can't seem to gel with that DS Penske very well, can he, compared to Vern especially? You know, we've said this before in previous Cruel Corners that it looks like Vern's adapted to the car more than Van Dorn has, and Van Dorn's struggling just to score points at times. But here he is picking up 4 points, you know, has to be commended in some respects. At least he's scoring points, but he's just not getting the glory results, is he? And it's a shame for the champion as well, let's not forget. He was last year's champion, and here he is struggling like anything, really. So, yeah, big shame. But nonetheless, Stoffel van Dorn, I'm going to award him 6.5. 6.5 on the Cruel Corner to him. I don't think he's got the best car on the grid by any stretch of the imagination, but if Vern's on the podium, he needs to be in top 5 minimum to say, oh yeah, you matched your teammate, you know. But Van Dorn just seems to just be lacking that little bit that Vern can find, and it's going to cost him in the long run, really. You know, especially if Vern keeps getting these glory results. Yeah, he's going to be in for a difficult time. But for now, 6.5 on the Cruel Corner to Van Dorn. In 9th place, it is Nico Muller. Get in, Nico. Fantastic job in the Apt. What a fantastic weekend for Apt. What a fantastic race overall. This one particular race event was phenomenal for him. Lining up 1-2 on the grid. We'll come to Robin Freitz in a moment, of course, but for Nico Muller, second on the grid, and he stayed inside that top 10 as good as much as he possibly could. Tumbled down to 11th at one stage, and like, oh no, please score points. You deserve it, and there he is delivering a 9th place. 2 crucial points to the Apt squad. 2 crucial points for his campaign as well, because he quickly became the only driver not to score points this season, then apart from, of course, Van der Linde, who wasn't a full-time driver. But there he is, securing those 2 points. And I'm so chuffed for Apt in front of their home crowd, their home fans. They had a lot of hospitality guests there. They had all the sponsorship across the board in around the circuit. Cupra, Apt everywhere. They deserved it. They deserved that. And those 2 points, I bet they had a massive party. And rightfully so. They so deserved it. So, for Nico Muller, it's going to be 11 points on the Cruel Corner to him. Fantastic job, Nico. I am so chuffed for you. So chuffed for Apt. And yeah, it's been a long time coming. I'm glad they've scored points. Really am. Congratulations, Nico Muller. I'm thrilled. 11 points to you, buddy. Picking up the final points-paying position, it is, of course, Dan Tinctum. He recovered himself after the tragic events of race 1, where he drove like a little bit of a wally and took Van Dorn out, even though you could quite clearly see he was there, more than alongside him, more than ahead of him, and just continued to shove him straight into the wall. He got a lot of criticism for it, didn't he? I saw that on social media afterwards. I'm like, yeah, but you've got to allow a guy a mistake. You know, he's been quiet for the first 7 rounds this season, and on that 7th round it went a bit wrong. But you've got to allow a mistake or two at some point. No driver's ever perfect. And yeah, I could have gone in a lot harder on him, but I'm not going to, because, as I said, people are allowed mistakes. People are entitled to make mistakes at times. And Tinctum has recovered the weekend well. He picks up a point. It's nothing special, but for Neo, when you've got the likes of Apt scoring points, Mahindra scraping points here and there, you've got Maserati suddenly jumping on the board, that point could be a crucial point for them. So they needed that, and he got it. You know, there wasn't many retirements in this race either, and they needed the points, and he got 1, and that could be a crucial 1 for them. So, yeah, Tinctum, I fully commend him this race weekend overall. I think he drove well, considering he was down at the back with the 18th and 19th, so the wet conditions didn't suit them in qualifying, and he gained at least 8 places to finish inside the points, and that has to be commended in a Neo that struggles on energy as well. We know it's not as energy efficient, so yeah, for Dan Tinctum, I'm going to award him a total of 7.5. 7.5 to Dan Tinctum overall, because yeah, he deserves praise, but it's not brilliant. You know, it needed to be more overall this weekend, but for this race in particular, he drove well, and he's deserving of a solid 7.5. Just outside the points, we come to Sasha Fenestras finishing in 11th place. That's a shame for Sasha, really, but this weekend's just not been Nissan's weekend, has it, at all, unfortunately. Sorry to say, Nissan, but it hasn't. They've really struggled with the circuit, but I hope in future races they can get their act back together again. We can see another fantastic pole lap from Fenestras. We can see him on the podium at last, hopefully, as well. He's come so close before. But yeah, fingers crossed the results come back to him. But for now, a difficult weekend overall. One to forget for Nissan, really. Not picking up any points whatsoever from a double header isn't what they had in mind, but clearly just struggle with the track surface in particular. Not a great qualifying performance in either session either. Not great racing. It's not their fault, it's the car's fault, and you can see that because both drivers were struggling roughly together, you know. So yeah, Sasha Fenestras has been one of the stars of this season in terms of being a rookie and really delivered some great results early on in the season. One bad round, one bad weekend doesn't mean he's bad. I just think it means the team didn't quite adapt to the nature of the Berlin circuit. So for Sasha Fenestras, it's 7 points on the cruel corner to him. And yeah, I think that's the best I can do for now, but still not his fault at all. A solid 7 to Sasha. In 12th place, we come to Lucas Di Grassi, and very much like the Nissans, they've had a difficult weekend overall, really. Roland picking up that point in round 1 is the best it's getting for them, for Berlin anyway, round 1 Berlin. But this weekend, it's been 11th and a 12th for Di Grassi. Frustrating that he didn't get into the points himself, really. I'm sure he'd be thinking of ways that, oh, if I could have took attack mode here or bided my time a little bit more here, I could have had more energy at this point and maybe squeezed through to scrape a point. But that's life, that's racing. The Mahindra doesn't look to be any good now. Apart from that podium he had in the first round of the season, his season's took a slump rather rapidly, hasn't it? And that's not his fault. It's just a shame that the powertrain's not that good. And I think that's what's really holding him back the most. It's the powertrain as opposed to the team, really. A bit like Taps Cooper, isn't it? They share the same powertrain. They're both struggling. So yeah, for Lucas Di Grassi, it's going to be the same as Fenestras. It's a solid 7 to him. And that's all I can really award him. There's drivers that have had better performances over the weekend. But at the same time, I can't score him too low because it's not their fault they're doing this badly. So yeah, a solid 7 to Di Grassi. Then we come to Rene Rast, and McLaren haven't really done much this weekend at all, have they? Once again, another team not to pick up any points from the double header. That'd be incredibly disappointing, especially for McLaren, because they've been looking strong in earlier races, and that's just slipped away from them now. Rene Rast overall, I can't really remember what happened in his race. I can't imagine it was anything too exciting. Did he have a front wing fall off again? I can't remember. There was plenty of front wings falling off there in this race, which are all coming shortly. But for Rene Rast, it's just the middle of the row 5. I can't really remember what happened. Can't remember what he didn't do. But yeah, here he is down behind Mahindras and Neos and Apps. Yeah, middle of the row 5, and probably generous by a point or two that as well. So yeah, there you go. 5 to Rast. Then we come to Ollie Rowland finishing just behind Rene Rast, and again, you know, he's a couple of places behind his teammate Di Grassi. But again, it's just difficult for Mahindra this weekend, isn't it? Rowland picked up that point in round 1 at Berlin. That's as good as his weekend's going to get, and here he is languishing down in wherever we are now. Big shame for him, really. But overall, it's going to be 6 points on the cruel corner to him, because at the end of the day, it's not his fault this car's this bad, but it's life, isn't it? I don't really know what else I can say, to be honest. It's just difficult, isn't it? It's just difficult for him to really work out what to do with that car, and the car's not playing ball, the powertrain's really weak, and he's doing all he can. Ollie Rowland, he's had a bad deal, but at least two solid results this weekend. Points in the first race. He's finished the second, no damage. A lot of teams are having damage, and yeah, 6 points on the cruel corner to him. Next up is Sergio Sette Camera in the Neo, and oh dear, he's down here again, isn't he? Dan Tinkton picks up a point, and Sette Camera doesn't really do much. He's still got no energy, and he's still at the back of the pack. Not great, is it? So short and sweet for Sette Camera. It's going to be 3 points on the cruel corner to him. Yeah, poor weekend overall, really, for him. You know, Tinkton took the glory in terms of leading the first race, and then he took the glory in terms of causing controversy by taking Van Dorn out. And then in this race, you know, Tinkton made his way through from a lowly grid position to secure a point. Sette Camera just stayed at the back. So Big shame for him. But fingers crossed, because I do like Neo, one of my favourite teams on the grid, and I do hope they do really well in future races, and I hope Sete Camera can score some more points because he deserves it. But this weekend overall was just a performance by him. So yeah, Sergio Sete Camera, just 3 points. Then we come to Norman Nato in the Nissan. No, Norman Nato in the Nissan. That's right, and what could we say for Norman Nato? It's going to be pretty much the same as Fenestras, really. Middle of the road 5 to Norman. I think he had front wing damage. Is he the first one to self-destruct and take his wing off? I can't remember, but nonetheless, 5 points to him. Yeah, it's difficult when we get down here, and some drivers had bad results and weren't their fault, and some drivers had damage, weren't their fault, etc. And yeah, 5 points to Norman Nato, I think, is fair. Middle of the road. And there we go. Then we come to Robin Freins in the other apt, and what a shame to say his name so far down here in P17, I think we are now. P16, I can't remember where the bloody hell we are, but nonetheless, Robin Freins, you know, pole position. 3 points to him no matter what happened in that race. He was guaranteed 3 points for that pole position, and he thoroughly deserved those 3 points. Unfortunately, he went for the more calmer strategy. They went for an attacking strategy with Muller. They went for a calm strategy with Freins, and in the end, both cars had roughly the same amount of percentage. And Freins was at the back of the grid and Muller was still inside the points. So it didn't work out for Freins this weekend, unfortunately. And he wasn't able to pick up any more points in the race, but he did get that pole position lap and thoroughly deserved the 3 points he got. And for those 3 points alone, and for that pole position, and for that warm, fuzzy feeling I got inside of me knowing that they'd locked out the front row, the app team, it's going to be a full 10 points to Robin Freins. And no one can begrudge me of that. I'm sorry, but he drove a blinder in that qualifying session, got his pole lap by over his teammate by, you know, 0.6 of a second. It has to be commended. And yeah, the result didn't go his way, but as mentioned, they elected to go calm with one driver, attacking and aggressive with the other, and one strategy worked and one didn't. If they'd have both gone attacking and they had both not worked, they'd have wished they'd have gone 1-on-1. You know, it's just how the cookie crumbles, just how they drew out the straws, who was doing what. It didn't work out for Freins, but he picked up 3 points anyway. So yeah, every driver this season has scored at least a point now, apart from Van der Linde, bless him, who was at the app team while it was a little bit difficult. It's still very much difficult for those guys, but he drove really well in his own right, did Van der Linde, in the races he did do. And yeah, but you know, for the full-time drivers at least, it's points for everyone, and that's lovely to see, isn't it? So yeah, Robin Freins, a full 10 points for me. Yeah. He drove really well in that qualifying and deserved 10 just for that alone. So next up is Jake Hughes, and yeah, what happened to his race? All just came undone again. Did he get wing damage? Did he have to pit for a nose? I think he did, didn't he? It wasn't a great result, but once again, a bad weekend for McLaren overall. Jake Hughes down here. I think he was a retirement as well. Yeah, not great overall, but for me, I've scored Jake Hughes 3 points. Yeah. It's just been a difficult weekend for McLaren overall, really, and Jake's problems once again compounded to it. So yeah, not a brilliant weekend overall. McLaren, no points out of a double-header race weekend. Not good at all. So yeah, fingers crossed for a better performance for Jake and for McLaren next time around. But for now, just 3 points on the cruel corner to him. Then we come to Sam Bird. Oh no, he was a definite undo due to damage, wasn't he? Couldn't really work out what happened there and why he picked up the damage. It was just little contact, little nudges and bumps, wasn't it? Once again in that jostling for not being in first position. And the front wing dislodged, and then he just totally went poof and went bang, and then it just all went horribly wrong for him, didn't it? And he had to pit, no downforce on the front, and unfortunately that was the end of his race, really. So again, you know, a difficult one to judge. It was unfortunate. It probably was his mistake, you know, bumping into the back of another car, but did he get nudged from the car behind? We're never going to know. It was just bunching, and there were a lot of unlucky drivers down the bottom of this field. So yeah, for Sam Bird, it's another 3 points to him, same as Jake. I think that's fair. You know, a lot of unlucky drivers this time around, and just one of those things, unfortunately. So yeah, 3 points to Sam, and after such a strong round one, it's a disappointing end to his weekend, but I don't think he'll be too disheartened. You know, he's had some tough moments, but at least he's had plenty of podiums this year now, and hopefully this bad luck is behind him for good now, and he can just continue to go forward from here on in. Then we come to Sebastian Buemi, another victim of a front wing failure, and that one was a catastrophic one, wasn't it? Yeah, he sustained damage, and it was like, oh my god, look at that, like, that's not going to survive. And then just as he was on the team radio going, please let me know what the wing's like, he went into turn one, and the front wing went, boom, folded up underneath his wheels, and he went, bang, and then slid, and then couldn't get into turn one. And yeah, no front downforce once again on Buemi. Meant that he had to go to the pits, and then he retired as well. So yeah, did he retire? Did he keep going? I can't remember what happened to these cars, but nonetheless they were well out of contention regardless anyway. And Buemi is another one of those strong race one, almost on the clutches of a podium, you know, right up until that final lap of the final corner. And in this race, you know, it was looking strong again inside the top 5 when the problem happened, but just this bunching and the wings really not sustaining the damage that they did in the first race. So it's almost like they'd had a little bit of a knock and a push, and the teams have gone, yeah, that's all right, but it's actually a weakened structure, and the slightest touch then means that it compounds into a bigger problem for race 2. Would be my assumption on the matter. You know, they've had a visual inspection, it looks okay, but structurally it's taken some damage, and then the lightest knock in round 2 causes front wing failure. You know, it could be a situation like that, because it's funny that a lot of drivers were suffering from front wing failures with minor damage to the point where we didn't even see a replay how it was caused. So yeah, big shame for Buemi, and just 2 points on the cruel corner to him. Yeah, big shame overall, but there you go, that's racing. And then we come to Andre Lotterer, and I've had enough of him now. We just saw a glimpse of him just off in the corner somewhere, just stuck in the wall or just reversing out of a wall. He was like, oh, fuck my life. Why? Why are we even bothering now? So for Andre Lotterer, he is disqualified from the cruel corner, meaning I won't be talking about his races coming up, his races afterwards, because it's just dismal, isn't it? It's just such a disappointment. Disappointment after disappointment. If he's not taking himself out, he's taking someone else out, or he's just having such a poor performance, he's just sat at the back of the grid. Mexico, race 1 was his peak. 4th place was that finish, and then he's not got any better since, and in fact struggled to score points since then as well. So yeah, big shame for Lotterer, and he's disqualified on the cruel corner. That's the end of that. And last but by no means least, it is Eduardo Mortara. Master of his own self-destruction again, front wing issue, failure, no points, had to pit, retire. And again, just Mortara though. Mortara doing Mortara things. So I'm going to be generous and not disqualify him, but I'm feeling I might have to give him a final warning perhaps. I'll see how he gets on at the next race, but that's my feeling at the moment, a final warning for Mortara. Because Gunter's had a good weekend this weekend overall, and Mortara's just picked up a few points. His teammates took a whole chunk of points off of him. So yeah, an interesting one, an interesting dynamic that's going to be there at Maserati coming forward as well. So yeah, Mortara, 0 points to him this time around. And a final warning, I think, should be issued to him. Any more silly business, and he's going to be joining Lotterer in the disqualification pile. So there everything, guys. Those were the runners and riders of the Berlin E-Prix round number 2 from there this weekend. Let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. Did I score any drivers too high? Any too low? As always, the results updated now with the scores that I've just awarded are on the standings now. Take a look and see where your favourite driver is. Have they shot up to the top of the field? Are they down at the bottom? Is Lotterer your favourite driver? Do you think he should have been disqualified? As always, let me know in the comments below. Thanks as always go out to Dan at Mushy Gaming for providing me with these scoreboards. Without him, this series will be more pointless than it already is. Thanks as always for watching, guys. Apologies again for the delay. Sorry I'm a few days late with this one, but yeah. Thank you so much for your support, continued support, your comments, and your interaction. It really does mean the world. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and as always, much love.